Welcome, everyone. Welcome to today Innovation Coffee Special Brew. This is day one, Industry Expert Hour. So today we're going to have an amazing episode with some special guests. And we'll talk about how cloud native meets the edge with two experts and amazing engineers. I'm really excited about this episode. And before we get started, I just wanted to say that we've just closed off our first day of Arm DevSummit. It was an awesome day. I had so much fun. There was so many interesting things to watch, to do, and I'm really excited for the other 2 days that we've got ahead of ourselves. And if you're not yet registered, you can register for free. If you're already registered, then you can find all the sessions that went on today on the platform. And without further ado, I want to say welcome to my co-host, Robert.
Hi, Alessandro. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks. Yeah, I really want to echo everything that Alessandro just said. The day one Arm DevSummit was amazing. Keynote opening with CEO of Arm, Simon Segars, got to see a fireside chat, so many cool things. And that is why we're here. So we're going to be talking about all of the cool things that happened today with two amazing guests. We are joined by Mark Abrams, who is a field engineer and edge specialist at Rancher Labs, and Andrei Warkentin, who is the Arm enablement architect at VMware. He's also one of our Arm innovators. Esteemed Arm innovators. They'll both be joining us throughout this entire hour. I want to also, let everyone know that this is one of a series of 3. So we're joined by different guests each day, today, tomorrow, and all the way until Thursday, covering all 3 days of the Dev Summit. So Alessandro, let's bring on that first guest.
Let's bring on Andrei. Andrei, welcome to the show.
Hi, everybody. Great to be here.
Did you bring your coffee, by the way? We're going to cheers?
Yes, I did. My very special Arm
Innovation coffee. Oh, there you go. Yeah, nice.
Special mug.
Got to sip after the cheers, right?
Andrei, why don't you introduce yourself real quick? Tell us who you are, what you do, and we can get on.
Yeah, so I primarily am a software engineer at VMware, and incidentally, I'm one of the co-founders of our ESXi and Arm effort to port the hypervisor to 64-bit ARM systems. And I do a lot of ecosystems, partner enablement, and also kind of a long-term strategy around ARM support in our different products. As an aside of that, I'm part of the different standards bodies with ARM, including fairly recently the work we've done together to come up with System Ready, which is this new great set of specifications targeting non-server footprints. And that work actually came out of my other side hobby, implementing UEFI firmware for Raspberry Pi 3 and Raspberry Pi 4.
Awesome. Andrei, nice to get to know you. I mean, we've already known each other quite a bit, but nice for you to introduce yourself to our viewers. Now, bringing on our next guest is Mark Abrams. And Mark, let's click him on in from the green room. There you go. Mark, just like Andrei did, welcome, cheers. There you go. We got to sip it. My coffee is not even that hot anymore.
That's what I love about this mug. It keeps it hot.
So could you also kind of provide us with that origin story?
Sure. So I'm, as you said, a field engineer, edge specialist with Rancher Labs. I spend my days working with our customers and prospects and learning about their use cases, and especially as they move Kubernetes out to the edge and edge devices. My background personally, I actually kind of came up through the arts. I have a degree in sculpture and a degree in computer science after that. And I really love to bringing together the confluence of sort of tangible things, the devices, and then software, because I like to make moving sculpture, I guess you could call it, things that actually you can interact with.
I've heard it called physical computing before, never moving sculpture. I think I quite like that.
Yeah, physical computing, definitely.
Has that translated by chance into kind of a CNC-esque passion or any sort of 3D printing passion?
Yes, very much so. 3D printing kind of, it brings together the ability to kind of make pretty the hardware devices and kind of make them usable and useful, and add sensory interaction for audiences that you deploy these things to. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
So I think the first part of this segment, we're going to be, of course, diving into DevSummit. I know that both of you have sessions, all sorts of cool stuff that has been happening at the event around your companies and the things that you do and around ARM. But we're going to go into a few questions here first. And Andrei, you're first on the chopping block here.
Right.
Before we start digging into everything, could you give us a little teaser about the things that you're going to be participating in throughout this event? I know that you have, I think it's a panel tomorrow and a session on Thursday, but could you kind of tease it a little bit for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you might have heard, ARM actually is kind of dropping a bombshell with these new specifications to solve a real problem that all these wonderful hardware and firmware standards, they only exist on servers today, and they don't exist, or they didn't exist anywhere else. And now ARM is solving this problem at the edge with these whole new set of system-ready specifications. And so, like you pointed out, there's a panel, industry panel tomorrow that I'm one of the many members participating in that. And I think it's a wonderful discussion. I recommend tuning into that, and it's organized by Don Wei. And the other session I have on the 8th, on Thursday, talking about some of the things that VMware has been doing with ARM. So I think that one will be pretty interesting to tune into as well.
One more thing I know that I have on my list here is that VMware is actually participating in a virtual booth, right?
That's right.
So how will people access that, or where can people go find that?
So we are a part of the, it's called the Partner Hub. And so if you go navigate from the main page, you go to Partner Hub, and you'll see a whole bunch of logos, and then you can click on any logo and actually move from booth to booth. And what you get in every one of these booths is you get a pitch video from the different partners that are there, and also some collateral, like I know that we are providing like slide deck there, but others I think a lot of people are providing slide decks that way. But you can also interact interactively and ask questions. So and we're open to discussions around Project Monterey, which is the SmartNIC announcement we did last week, and of course about this other thing that we're talking about this week, which is this Fling of ESXi-Arm.
And we're going to have plenty of time to talk about the ARM Fling. That was a big announcement this morning. So we'll definitely move into that in just a moment. Mark, you're up.
All right. So today I presented on fleet management, and the way things are going with coronavirus, and we pre-record our sessions, and so I had to pre-record a session for fleet management, which we actually just released today as part of our 2.5 release of Rancher, which we announced today. Fleet management is a way to manage millions of Kubernetes clusters, and we believe that that's where the edge is going. That container orchestration is going to be a big part of the edge going forward. And so kind of talked about what is fleet and what it looks like for edge Kubernetes. Tomorrow,
Mark,
go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say, so while we're still on the topic of fleet, the session this morning, by the way, was awesome. I always love watching you talk. I got to see your session back at TechCon last year too. You mentioned during that session that, by the time this recording becomes viewable, it's possible that something in here might some of the terminology or some of the way that this works might no longer be accurate. Maybe we can update the viewers here if there were any changes that you're aware of that happened since that was recorded.
Yeah, so the changes, it's a little bit of refactoring, renaming, because there are three hard things in software. There's naming things, caching and off by one errors. So it's two hard things. Anyways, so it changed. It did change. It is a pretty dynamic project. We are a community. We're a lab, so we make stuff and we check with the community. What do they think? And we got feedback, and it needed to change more. So I wanted to share it with the community, but at the same time, it wasn't quite ready. I don't know. The changes I think are I tried to keep the presentation focused on what it's going to deliver, what it's going to provide to the user, as opposed to, and it was technical in a sense, but the technical pieces won't matter, I think, in the end. The naming conventions might.
It's interesting. I really like the fact that, I was looking at your session as well. I think me, Robert, and someone else on Twitter were like posting pictures of your session. It almost, sometimes I'm like, I miss real events, right? Where you could like tweet about stuff, but you could still do it here. So it still works. But I was looking at your session. I really appreciated actually the fact that you were saying, I've recorded this before, but there's changes, as Robert said, and you were kind of being open about it, and it's actually cool to see that you're willing to kind of talk about something even though it's not really fully functional.
I had butterflies this morning before it went live. That's pretty ridiculous, but it's like that's the feeling I get when I present live. No reason to feel that way, but I knew I was presenting something that changed, and so it makes me a little nervous.
Cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, so you were about to. Oh, sorry. I was just saying you were about to tease on the next session.
Oh yeah. So tomorrow,
really
I am going to present on turnkey devices. So Rancher Labs is focused on Kubernetes multi-cluster orchestration anywhere, pretty much in any cloud and any on-prem, wherever you want to do it. Trying to hit every device. ARM devices are huge on the edge, so we can run Kubernetes on these ARM devices on the edge. And tomorrow I'm going to talk about going kind of beyond the CPU and RAM and GPUs in the data center too, but really using Kubernetes to own the hardware. To in the case of what I do tomorrow, it's a turnkey device, so it's something. I actually have one here. So it looks like this, and it's got a Raspberry Pi on it. And so it's got a little case. There's an SD card, and basically tomorrow I'm going to talk about how I developed this, and the idea that I want to be able to send this to somebody, and just have them be able to plug it in, turn it on, and it works. And so that's what the talk is about tomorrow.
If I may jump in a second here, it's interesting that you both are doing stuff with Raspberry Pis, right? And I think a lot of times people don't really realize that Raspberry Pi is based on the ARM architecture, and it's quite interesting because people just know Raspberry Pi, right? Like everybody knows Raspberry Pi, even people are not embedded engineers, right? Like people that are just writing software just end up like writing stuff on Raspberry Pi, and it's quite it's quite exciting that we're at the turning point where Raspberry Pi is actually becoming an enabler for porting all this other great stuff that's always lived in the cloud to like edge devices, right? I quite like this kind of. I see it as a bridge almost, right?
It's very accessible, and that's I think part of it is that it's just it's inexpensive, and I think the IP model that ARM has sort of made it accessible because these hobbyist electronics builders could then build devices that then became popular. And frankly, the Raspberry Pi platform just has so much documentation around it. There's all sorts of other alternatives, but there's just so much documentation and support around that particular platform, that particular hardware, The Jets and Nanos are going down that same path, and I've got customers and prospects who want to use the Jets and Nanos in production. And I'm talking to NVIDIA about, when are you guys going to tell us these can be production ready, because they say they're not supposed to be production devices. So exciting stuff.
I see you unmuted. I was going to say, I see you unmuted there, Andrei. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, just to add to that, folks that know me well kind of know that I'm like a fairly unlikely champion for the Raspberry Pi, because I was one of the early fanboys for the entire server-ready movement, standardization. And if you think about it, the Raspberry Pi is exactly like the ARM Volt, where it's all kind of vertically integrated ecosystem. If you don't have a BSP, and the Linux version from the vendor, you're kind of out of luck, basically. On the other hand, right, just to kind of go back to what Mark just said, the Pi is wildly successful. You know why that is? It's because it has a huge ecosystem, and it's consistent. For example, I know that in 5 years, there probably will be a Raspberry Pi, like Raspberry Pi, I don't know, 10. But guess what? I'll probably still be able to use my Raspberry Pi 1, right? And any Pi hats I get today, and any code people develop, it'll still be usable. And if you look at all the other SBCs that are trying to pretend to be the Raspberry Pi killers, they're missing out on that aspect. It's very, very important. So they have this incredible momentum, a consistent ecosystem. Now, to be honest, there is documentation, but it's not at a low-level documentation, right? So it's not a very open platform yet. On the other hand, you just have to recognize that it is the most popular device that's ARM-powered. Like Alessandro, I think you mentioned, people don't know it's ARM, but they know what a Raspberry Pi is. If you can't capitalize on that, life gives you lemons. Well, guess what? You need to figure out how to turn that into an ally. How to be constructive and learn how to bring in a Raspberry Pi, which is a wildly successful ecosystem, to play along with all the other things you consider to be important, like standardization and enabling multiple, like a horizontal ecosystem, not a vertical one. And with the system ready, I think we're actually doing that, which is amazing, because we're now looking at the Pi, which was a while incompatible with anything device, even though, on high-level APIs and ARM, even like Linux, it's all the same, great. But then when you even talk about actually deploying the device, what does it mean to push an OS update to it, right? How do you update the firmware on it? It's becoming more regular, and the fact that it's a device that's now officially certified, that's amazing. So Raspberry Pis are awesome.
I mean, the Raspberry Pi does have the first movers advantage. They were one of the first people to get that going. But on that note, I couldn't help but notice this either. Even during the keynotes this morning, popping into several sessions, I feel that the Raspberry Pi just comes up everywhere. It's, everyone's just using it everywhere. So, just kind of complementing or adding to the points that you all just mentioned there. Definitely an easy thing to pick up. And we have a comment here from Kevin. It's amazing the amount of the ecosystem that is brought on our Pi, brought up on our Pi. That's very true. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's also, that accessibility, the fact that I'm not a hardware guy, right? I dabble in hardware. I am dangerous with a soldering iron, but I have yet to actually build a board or build something like that from scratch.
I'm dangerous to myself with soldering iron,
Right.
You ever see the
Oh, sorry. The Raspberry Pi lets me have that accessibility to hardware at a lower level through software, and so it's really advantageous like that.
The cheapest one is what, $35? The A plus, the 3A plus, $35.
$10 for the Nano, for the Raspberry Pi W0, the zero. Yeah,
that's amazing. It's the cheapest, highest volume board out there, and the fact is, yes, while there's no good kind of standard documentation for it, there's an entire body of knowledge that people have created, reverse engineered, produced, tutorials. Can I learn bare metal programming? Yes, you can. There's 1 million tutorials out there, and you can go do it. Do you want to learn ARM assembly? Yes, you can. GPU programming? Yes, you can. All these things. And if I take any random SBC off the shelf, yes, it'll be challenging, and then in a few years it might become a doorstop. And you got to learn from the Raspberry Pi folks. They know exactly how to curate an ecosystem well.
But I think there's a lot, not just the Raspberry Pis. I think there's a lot of devices that are starting to move in that direction with the AI. With the Jetson Nanos now, and those maybe weren't the first. I think there was another board. I think the Google TPU boards maybe were the first, and I don't even know what the chip is on those, honestly. The TensorFlow boards, but everybody seems to be talking about the Jetson family at this point, and those are ARM chips. And again, just so accessible. I mean, the dev kits, the SDK, it's all there, and I don't have to know the hardware so much.
But I tell you, as a low-level systems guy, I personally can't wait to see this mind meld of NVIDIA Tegra and Mellanox Bluefield, because I totally buy what you're saying about the high-level APIs and the compilers and the actual cool go do stuff like robotics. People are building robots with the Tegras. But as a systems guy, I really appreciate how the Mellanox Bluefield stuff is boring and like server ready and standardized. I want to see the mix of those two, where like you get both those things combining together for an amazing ecosystem.
Yeah.
I was going to bring something up. Sorry, Robert. I was going to bring something up because I think this is an interesting point that I tried before, but I failed because I brought up something else. But I was going to bring up the actual, so the system ready page, right? And I was going through this today, and there are different bands. I mean, you guys can talk to this more than I can, but there are different bands. And if you click on system ready, let's see if this works. Yeah, it's really amazing to see the Raspberry Pi as the first system ready ES certificate in the certification list, right? So and I think Andrei, I think this was a lot of your work has gone into this, right? So.
Nice.
Again, and I had to cross-check this with my ARM handlers. partners. I had to check this just so I wouldn't make like crazy statements like, Andrei, what are you talking about? And I asked Samer, like I think that the system-ready ES stuff actually got kickstarted when I was at the ARM partner meeting, and to Kevin, to Bumik, to Drew Henry, I did this proposal saying, look, the Pi 4 it looks like almost like a normal system now. We have this UE5 for Pi 3. Can we try and make the Pi 4 server ready? Like, it's probably impossible to do, but can we at least like die trying to do that? And I asked him, it sounds like this was the beginning of system ready, right? He's like, yeah, that's true. I'm like, okay, I'm not making this stuff up. Good. But yeah, I mean, and the thing is, it's funny how the UE5 stuff for me was kind of like a side project, and even getting ESXi on the Pi, really a side project as for the other ESXi and ARM stuff we're doing. But it's a whole project in itself. There's so many moving parts. There's so many people involved in it, right? It's daunting. It's like a whole product by itself. And to see that graduate into an actual certification for the platform, I remember somebody on Twitter calling like UE5 and the Pi be like lipstick on a pig. Like, no, it's definitely not lipstick and a pig anymore. We're making the Pi boring. That's amazing.
So I think this is a good segue. First, I want to mention, we're talking about the Raspberry Pi so much. There's going to be a ecosystem talk. I think it's tomorrow with Evan Upton, the CEO founder of Raspberry Pi. So that's a great opportunity for anyone who's here just saying like, hearing Raspberry Pi so many times, you want to go hear from Evan Upton. Great session tomorrow. Check that out. But this is a great segue. I think you just kind of mentioned it, Andrei. We have this on our list to elaborate further on this announcement that happened this morning with VMware and the ARM Fling, ESXi-Arm Fling. So maybe you can kind of, I don't know, fill us in on some of the highlights there. Talk to us just a minute.
Okay, I'll be very brief. What does a Fling sound like? So a Fling is a non-committal tech preview, right? This is our way of distributing ESXi-Arm, the hypervisor, where we've been working on for a few years now, distribute this to basically the general public, and allow the general public to evaluate the technology. Why we're doing this? Because we want to get feedback on the different use cases. We've talked about the IoT edge compute use case before. right? But we don't want to limit ourselves to one kind of scenario. And so for the Fling, right, we actually are supporting the Fling on a number of footprints from servers to edge devices, including the Raspberry Pi, because we want to hear feedback from all angles. And this is, of course, on top of the existing Project Monterey announcement from last week, which is actually a productization of the ESXi-Arm technology on SmartNICs to help, to basically our story for disaggregating the hypervisor to build next generation server hardware data centers. And again, the Fling, it's like a technical evaluation. It's obviously not supported. Don't deploy it. Can burn your house down. Eat your cat. Don't do it. We support 4 different systems: Ampere, eMac, Raspberry Pi, a few NXP Layerscape-based systems. It can run on other things probably, but we don't really want to hear about it. So these are current systems that really personify well the use case for where you would want to run it. So take the things, grab the bits, try it out, let us know. Hope you like it. If you don't, let us know too. Like this is not supposed to be a once. We're not just flinging this over the wall. There's that word again. So as we get feedback and bugs and things like that, we'll do our best effort to address them.
Yeah, and everything that we're talking about today, I just want to remind anyone who's watching here, we'll try to collect everything we can. I know we mentioned links and places to go and where resources can be seen, but we'll include as much as possible in the description of the video. So, if you're watching this and you're wondering where you can go see all this stuff, just scroll on down and check the description once this posts. So we're kind of at the halfway mark, unless you have anything else to add to these particular questions. I think we can kind of move on to what we're excited about around the event.
Sounds good. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Let's cool. So I want to start with Mark here. And of course, Alessandro and I have our own little sheet of notes of the things we're excited about. But we'll kind of just go around the table here. Let's focus on today. Mark, I don't know. Were there any things, and I know your session obviously most exciting, right? But besides your session, were there any other things that you kind of like stuck out to you during the event that you want to highlight?
Yeah. First of all, I'm my worst critic, so I'm not sure mine was the most exciting. It
was fun.
At the bottom, but there were a couple sessions today that I was really interested in, and one is I kind of like to get in over my head, and then I learned something, and I'll get ideas, and it just moves things forward for me. So there was one session on digital twins for development in autonomous ready systems. I think it was from somebody from Siemens, and definitely was outside a lot of the autonomous stuff is way outside the scope of my knowledge and understanding about what has to go into autonomous vehicles. But the digital twin concept is an edge IoT concept. And so, from that perspective, I just find it fascinating, and I'm trying to, let's look at what they're doing in autonomous. Obviously, that's an edge use case also, but, digital twins are the ability, it's a testing framework for things out on the edge, but we put the testing framework in the cloud. And I think to me, that's really fascinating. And emulation, right? We're kind of getting back to how do we emulate the environment, this physical environment that we built, made of all these different chips and SOCs and systems. And so I found that to be a very fascinating discussion and talk. And I recommend people go back and watch it. That was a good one.
Yeah, so I didn't get a chance to see that one, but for some reason, it just reminds me of your session last year at TechCon, where you had the kind of consensus voting for, securely executing things. I mean, when you're talking about automotive and safety and autonomous driving and all these kind of things, you can't just have one device decide what's happening. You have to have multiple fail safes and a voting mechanism. And if one device goes down or a sensor goes down, I mean, this kind of now dives into, Rancher and the whole container orchestration process and making sure that you're on either the 3, 5, 7 model, stuff like that, where you're able to, actually make sure something is safe, right? Did they touch on anything like that, or am I just completely out to left field here?
No, the digital twin is really outside the vehicle. It's like outside that edge piece. So it's really, and yes, there's a lot of redundancy and resiliency. And I think the craziest part of it is that a lot of it has to be real time. So there's some autonomous vehicle operations that don't have to be real time. But whatever it is, the digital twin discussion is really about how do I test that without building this massive autonomous vehicle every single time I want to make an update. How can I test it in a simulated environment successfully? And that's really what the talk was about.
I definitely have to go check that out.
It's funny.
And then there's like
Sorry, no, Andrei, go on.
I just want to kind of add to that it's Robert, you brought up a good point that it's making sure that the thing doesn't go crazy and miscompute something, right? So basically having that validation on another system, in real time, right? Kind of a lockstep. So that's one aspect of it that I think is pretty important. Obviously, a challenging problem to solve at the scale of an actual automotive system. But the other aspect is fault tolerance, which again, probably not in the context. Actually, it would be wonderful to solve. Imagine making the entire ADAS system be fault tolerant in the sense that, if like a large rock, impacts the car exactly where one of the compute nodes was, it still continues running, right? Yeah. Again, that would be amazing, just the sheer amount of data that gets passed through that. But fault tolerance is one of those things that, again, I think are important to the edge. So, yeah, I think it's all complementing.
Andrei, I predict there will be legislation along the lines of enforcing that there are redundant systems in vehicles because of issues that'll happen before we fully have redundant systems.
But the technical aspect of making and again, I know ARM has but a few years back announced chips that support doing lockstep, so actually configuring splitting the two clusters, and one which then locks up with the other. But when I say fault tolerance, I'm really talking about having two completely separate systems, right? Yeah. That are able to take over instantly, completely instantly. And I think think about the technical challenges with that. I mean, that would be a fun project, but I'm not sure I would want to be in the car that I wrote the software for, to be honest.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think now that was a good one. There we go. Good discussion around the session you just brought up, Mark. Andrei, what about you? Did you have any particular sessions, or it could even be a mention in the keynote or something that happened during the fireside that you want to bring up?
There were a couple of things that caught my eye. Obviously, I'm a hypervisor guy, and so I enjoy listening to the cloud hypervisor session about using Rust to build a VMware. And that's awesome. More hypervisors running on ARM, right? Especially using new novel engineering techniques. That is exactly what I think all of us want to see, especially in the context, of course, of edge systems, autonomous systems, where being able to catch a whole set of kind of bad engineering practices at compile time. Yeah, I think it's paramount. I mean, again, it's not to say that you can't build bad software in Rust. I'm pretty sure it's possible, right? But the fact that you can at least limit some of the damage away from some known kind of bad, patterns, I think that's a good thing, especially for folks kind of experimenting with different kind of virtualization, lighter weight virtualization engines. So I think that was interesting. I myself, I do not do Rust. I am not a Rust expert, but it got gears spinning in my head. Like, well, wouldn't it be interesting to write, for example, a stable OS driver API that is Rust-based? Okay, that'd be kind of cool, especially since if you think about a lot of things that people write, boilerplate code, right? And generally, driver APIs are not good about that. They're not abstract boilerplate. Like you go to own your boilerplate and copy paste that across multiple drivers. I know Microsoft is actually really good about giving you decent driver samples, but again, you're still copy pasting their code. It's not as if you can just link to some library, right, and use that. So boilerplate. Another one is wouldn't it be awesome to write some of the system firmware like UEFI in Rust? Again, you don't have to boil the ocean at once, but slowly and gradually, because people have been complaining about how complicated some of these open source implementations of UEFI like TinyCore are, and again, bad engineering kind of patterns. resolving code quality issues. And this, by the way, prompts another interesting talk, the one on Linux-based booting, LBBR, which is like using Linux as your system firmware. So yeah, I think those two are the ones that really caught my attention, both the cloud hypervisor and the Linux boot and ARM ones.
Another two I wasn't able to see, but yeah.
It was interesting because actually I was going to say that both of these were on my list, but unfortunately I had other things to watch at that time. Actually attend, because I was actually hosting one open hours. And I was going to ask you on this, actually. I was going to say, did you attend any office hours or ecosystem talks?
So Alessandro, the problem, I mean, this is my gripe. Take my feedback, okay? Is that for whatever reason, the thing that I find personally interesting all seem to be the same time.
That's for everyone.
But no, I can't go talk to him because it's colliding with the thing I'm hosting, right? And so and I get the feeling that maybe some of the kind of things in the same kind of industry track might be grouped together, and mixing them up might be a better approach. But it's great. At least, I mean, obviously for office hours, yeah, you missed the boat. But the platform does allow for on-demand streaming of all the sessions you've missed.
That's true. And I mean, on that note, also, there are going to be a lot of sessions that are almost immediately going to be transitioning from the platform, especially the ones that were hosted on Zoom, directly to this YouTube channel. So, keep your eye out over the next 72 hours as these videos are downloaded and then uploaded over here on YouTube. So when you're talking about all these sessions overlapping, I was baffled, honestly. You go to the Live Now tab, right, on the DevSummit, and there's like 12 sessions starting at the same time. And I'm looking at my agenda and I'm like, whoa, did I miss something else? Like, let me see, because there's a lot of sessions going on right now. But same boat as Alessandro, fortunately and unfortunately, we're also helping with the event, right? So we're proctoring certain calls and making sure that they're moderated properly to ensure the best experience for the attendees. So I hope everyone's enjoying them.
This call may be monitored for quality purposes, right?
It is. It's recorded live. Yeah. No, we're there, and I had a great time during a networking session with Richard Henwood, one of my colleagues, where he's talking about ARM-based laptops. So, we talked about the Lenovo C630. We talked about the Pinebook Pro. We talked about the Surface X. So there was a lot of really cool discussion there around enablement.
So I jumped in on that, and all I saw was Marcin, well-known
did at the right time,
and in the community, actually asking the same old question he always asks, which is the question that I ask and everybody else asks, and is, okay, laptops, can we get a workstation? Can we get a good development system, right? Okay, Honeycomb, great, we got a Honeycomb, and I don't want to put that effort down, it's amazing. And the folks behind it, both at Celeron and XP, amazing. But we can't have just one of something. Can we have more? We need more ARM development systems.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, that's a good segue into one of the other talks that I didn't get to look at today. But there was a talk about chip design on ARM in the cloud.
I wanted that one too.
Yeah, and I would have really liked to see that. Again, probably a bit outside my actual working realm, but I like to see what's out there, and I'd love to constantly trying to figure out how to design a chip and get it manufactured. So I've got ideas.
Microsoft had a session on their just developing for Windows and ARM, which was a nice session, just to get familiar with it. I really wish they wouldn't talk about it in terms of Microsoft and Qualcomm, because it really is Microsoft and ARM. And I'm really hoping there's going to be more systems than just the Qualcomm-based systems. But I bet some people learned today that you can do containers, do containers on Windows, Linux containers on Windows on ARM. Which again, you could say it's baffling that all this stuff exists out there. But today on Windows and ARM devices, you can run VMs, you can run Linux in a VM, you can run Windows in a VM, you can run obviously WSL2, WSL1. It's kind of interesting to see this progression of Windows to be this. I sense this parallel with Mac OS. When it was called OS X, and where it became this kind of Unix with a human face environment. So I think it's interesting, like, where Microsoft is kind of trying to build this developer ecosystem and actually buy into the cloud and edge developer ecosystems, which are obviously Linux developer ecosystems.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. There was a lot of interesting things, and I think one of you two brought up the fact that like we are seeing all this new development on. I think Andrei was you. New development on all sorts of things, right? And there's so much stuff out there, and like people just don't realize actually how much stuff is happening. And I was actually in the open hours session, office hours, session with Massimo Banzi from Arduino, and he was talking about how he sees the embedded development space or the embedded development environment kind of changing as well, right? Like there's people that are kind of not using low-level code anymore to like as much as before. Like people started off and like wanted to do assembly and wanted to do just C, and now it's like actually there's kind of different abstraction layers, right, that you can pick, and it's up to you what kind of abstraction layer you want to use. And I guess it depends mostly on how much time you have to develop, how much experience you've got, and so on. But it's cool that there are all these different abstraction layers that are opening up to like a lot different developers. Like there's developers. Yeah. Massimo was saying that there are developers that might not be embedded specialists, or like they might not be embedded developers, but they might be specialists in their own areas, right? Like they might be doing some, I don't know, furniture or something for the house or something, and they might want to put some electronics in there. They don't know how to do it, right? So giving them the ability to like introduce some electronics into things that you might want to build and create is super powerful, right? It can open up to like a whole new load of innovation.
I love if you saw the keynote this morning with Mark Hambleton when he was, he's in charge of kind of the open source group at ARM, and he brings up the TARDIS. Like if you're familiar with Doctor Who, the TARDIS where, you see just a regular old phone booth from the outside, but when you walk in, it's this huge area, right? Like a huge palace of stuff, right? He kind of refers to the ARM ecosystem as a reverse TARDIS, where it kind of feels small from the inside, but if you look at the world and everything that ARM is involved in, it's just crazy, like hundreds of billions of chipsets, and it's just amazing. And so yeah, kind of like echoing what Alessandro just said, it was nice to see that part of the keynote.
What earlier is to say this is why ARM, many ways I would attribute ARM's current success in the cloud, at the edge. It really is the success of an adoption of open source, right? Because when you say something runs on ARM, we're like, okay, it probably doesn't really run on ARM. It may be optimized to run on ARM, but a lot of this is like it runs on Linux. And now it's more about, okay, does Linux run on ARM? Does Linux run on these interesting footprints? And then again, does the hardware meet our requirements for the application? And the fact that open source has progressed from just something that a few folks interested in very specific domains like compilers, editors, operating systems could do, to be this generic tool set of everything. Like, you want to program websites? Fantastic, here you go. You want to do AI? Fantastic, here you go. In the ARM ecosystem today, anybody can walk in with their specific domain and be productive. This is why, Amazon and A1, I remember flying back from the reInvent event a year ago, and everybody in the plane was, of course, at the event. That's why it's kind of fun. It's an entire plane of reInvent attendees. And incidentally, the two people sitting right next to me were both adopting A1. What were they doing? Well, one was doing PHP, right? And the other one was doing Node.js. And I don't care this ARM, but it works well. It has the performance that you want for the workload they do, and it's dirt cheap. That's exactly what you want. So that they're getting their money, their money's worth, right? It's fantastic.
I had a customer actually just yesterday, asked if they could run Rancher on ARM devices because they want to use the A1 devices, and you can, but it's cheaper. It's just it's less expensive from the enterprise perspective to run the A1 devices, and so they're just looking at the cost of what they're running and saying, oh well, if we can run it on ARM, let's do that. And there's a lot of components that still need to be compiled for ARM, but that's not actually that complicated. at least in the container world, you can get an A1 instance and just build your Docker file on the A1 instance, and suddenly.
I mean, we've come really far, right?
Yeah.
And if you remember a few years back, ARM, basically had the jubilant note of, the software ecosystem is ready, and it definitely is ready. But I think the point I want to make is that some people will say, Andrei, geez, ARM isn't cheap, right? No, ARM is not cheap. ARM is about choice, right? So the difference between ARM and not doing ARM today is that with ARM, you're actually able to find the right hardware to fit your workload, right? And if you think about it, it's important at the edge and at the cloud. And the cloud is very simple. It's like, well, you're paying with your wallet right here and now, right? If you got the smallest instance and it still is too large, you are bleeding money, right? That's why try to figure out how to either make more use of it or get a smaller instance or something, right? At the edge, it's the other thing is, well, okay, you're operating in reduced power, temperature environments, so the ability to actually find something that will it's not just an off-the-shelf desktop PC, right? It's very powerful, and with ARM, you can have so many vendors that do custom solutions, and if you have enough money, it's still way cheaper to generate your own SoC or even your own platform design around the chip, right? And you cannot do this today without alternatives, right? In the same kind of compute power. So
I think that is just a huge message to drive home. I mean, my background, I come from 96 boards, right? And this was kind of like a standardized SBC, right? Something that you could essentially, it was a SoC agnostic, ARM SoC agnostic, standardized single board computers that you could kind of in some ways move your development from one SoC to another, right? You kind of see this across the board. And I think that, as we move forward with this whole systems ready movement and everything else that's happening around the standardization of this, it just becomes even easier to transition your work from one device to another. If all of a sudden you realize that you need more compute power, okay, there's an SoC for that. If you realize that you need more memory, all right, well, there's another SBC or a SOM for that. And so you can just kind of hopefully at some point seamlessly transition. You already can in a lot of cases, but seamlessly transition across these developer platforms. Then not only that, you can develop for those developer platforms on ARM-based laptops, and you can push this and test it on ARM-based servers. And it just kind of all just fits into the ecosystem for this to all just kind of beautifully work together. Real quick though, I do want to touch on one thing here, because in the effort of accenting cool things that are happening during this ARM DevSummit event, Kevin did bring up a good session, and I just want to let everyone see this real quick. Check out Jason Andrews' session, and I think this was based on something that we were talking about. Jason Andrews' session on developing ARM containers on Windows. So I did pull that up right here. So if you want to go add that to your calendar after you've registered for ARM DevSummit, you can head on over and type in Jason Andrews' name there, and he should pop up here. He's actually got several sessions going on, but definitely a good one to add to your. Oh, it's ended. We missed it. So on demand. Sorry.
I was like, check the summit. You can check the agenda, but that's the one. But there's another one I'm personally waiting. There's a keynote from Microsoft. I hope it's something amazing, right? But there's a huge keynote from Microsoft. I think is it tomorrow or Thursday? I forget. But it's like I'll be talking about the ecosystem. So I'm rooting for something amazing to happen. Who knows? It's gonna be great. Either way.
There was a bit of a tease in the keynote this morning. I don't know if you guys have heard, but there was a bit of a tease about the session on the last day.
Do you mind sharing what the tease was?
Well, I think you could go back to that. I don't want to share anything I shouldn't share.
Okay, got it.
No teasing. No, not teasing too much.
No teasing.
Yeah.
We got to go back and watch the keynote.
Yeah.
There you go. Is this the one right here, Andrei? Building for an ARM ecosystem?
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's the one I'm personally waiting for.
Moving forward here, we need to kind of stay a little bit on track. This is 9 minutes left for the live stream. I think everyone, you guys have brought up such good points and pointed out so many cool things. I'd like to focus, and I know, Andrei, we've already mentioned this one, the Microsoft keynote. Mark, do you have any things that you're excited about in the coming days? Some sessions that you absolutely must attend, and of course, not including the one that you're going to be given.
I look at the schedule in the morning and try and sort of figure out like what mood I'm in, and so I haven't reviewed the schedule for tomorrow yet. I kind of know going into it that I'm gonna find something. Like I know when I first registered, I actually like checked off a bunch of things. So tomorrow morning it's gonna pop up, and I'm gonna have this schedule and see. While you guys are talking, let me go check my schedule and see what I put on my schedule that I'm looking forward to for tomorrow.
Did you guys sign up to any of the workshops, by the way?
I did actually. I actually put down some money because, and I forget what the workshop was. It was they were going to send me a dev kit, and we were going to go through. And I was like, it's not much more than what I've done before, but I want another dev kit, right?
Maybe it's the Belina cloud one.
I couldn't sign up. And so I sent a message. It turns out it was at the same time as my session. And so it wouldn't let me add the session at the same time. So I got my money, but I hope people enjoy that session, whatever it was.
Find out what the dev kit is, and maybe we can still send one over to Mark, Alessandro. You can watch the workshop and do it later.
I'll tell you what it was.
Yeah.
I was also going to say it saved you a little bit, because if you booked it and over your session, then you would have missed your session.
What you're supposed to do. So
one thing.
I just want to point out that when I was building my agenda, you could mark things as favorite, and I kind of wanted to use that as my bookmark for things that thought were interesting, but I'm not there. And so I cannot seem to find a way through the UI. So if you folks know how to show things that I've marked as favorite or not part of my agenda, I think others will probably appreciate knowing how to do that.
So I have this open here. We can maybe figure this out together. When you mark it as favorite, I think that's when you put this little heart on there, right?
Okay. Yep.
So maybe if we go over to this calendar, that's not going to do it.
Oh, there you go. That was a box right there. My favorite.
Check my favorites.
Ooh, did I? Oh, favorites, favorite sessions.
Okay. Well, let's do that, because I marked some things that I thought were interesting, but again, I couldn't register for them. So
agenda. Let's go that again. You saw the box there. Maybe it's on the left side
this
here.
This is
my favorites.
Demo.
There you go. Yeah. So if you click my favorites, it'll pull up all your hearts. And so far it looks like I actually went through and hearted a bunch of stuff. So there you go. Some that's they even start recommending stuff for you. But that's a good point, because it won't let you add multiple things on the same time slot. It warns you, and you have to choose one or the other, but you can favorite everything. Another really good part what I've been using the most is that if you actually go to, I think it's probably off now, during the day when you click join, maybe it's over here. There's a point where you can click join. And when you click that, it pops up kind of the whole platform where you can start clicking and joining actual sessions. There's a tab that says live now, and that has the countdown for all the different sessions that are happening at the moment. I think that was really useful for me. On the spot, I got to choose between the one I had already picked out beforehand, or like one of 10 other ones that were going to be going live at the same time. So that was pretty useful. Okay, so 4 minutes left. Alessandro, what do you say? Should we give them each kind of a little moment, do a little shameless plug before we close this out? Get 2 minutes each or so.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think there's still a lot, a lot more that we could talk about, but I think you're going to have sessions, or one of you is going to have session. Mark is going to have sessions, right? Actually, both. Andrei's also going to have a session tomorrow. I didn't know if it was all today, but yeah, you're right. You're both going to have sessions tomorrow. So there's more to more to learn on the next session. So I think let's give him a bit of time to do a shameless plug at the end.
Yeah, and Mark, I know you have something to announce, so why don't we let you go first?
Sure.
Special announcement.
Yeah. So because this is this a new live stream that you guys are doing? This is the first one ever?
It's pretty new.
Give away one of these devices for your audience. So if you go to this info.rancher.com Arm DevSummit, you can win a Raspberry Pi 4 in a little cattle case. There's my camera. And it comes ready to go. You just plug it in, turn it on, tell it what your network is, and you can run Kubernetes. So you can get logged in and run K3s and kubectl commands on it.
Awesome.
Yeah, so super excited about that. Tomorrow, I just did want to say there is an HCI talk tomorrow, human-computer interface, like tangible stuff. So that's right up my alley. That's one of the ones that I'm hoping to get to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know how else to plug myself.
So I'll give you a little plug here. Mark Abrams, he's available on Twitter. Go follow him. That's @AbramsMark on Twitter. And then, of course, Rancher Labs, definitely worth following. They post stuff regularly, and there's some amazing things happening there. So that's twitter.com/Rancher_Labs or @Rancher_Labs at Twitter. What do you think, Mark? Did I do okay for you?
Thanks, Robert. I'll be better next time.
No, it's perfect. You did great. So Andrei, you're up. And thank you, Mark, by the way. Oh, you're muted.
I probably already said enough to get me in trouble anyway, but sure, I'll just keep talking. Again, we've launched this ESXi on ARM Fling. It is a technical preview. It's not a beta. It's not a product. We want your feedback so we can find out how to basically deliver what you want. And check it out. You can do cool stuff. vMotion and VM between two Raspberry Pis. Do fault tolerance. Kind of cool. In fact, if you, and this is where Robert should plug the website. Yeah, so that is the official VMware and ARM website. And this is where you have all the things around what we're doing with ARM and VMware. And this is where there'll be more blog posts detailing things you could do with Fling, maybe some interesting use cases, some platforms that we don't claim to support, like in the Fling, but it will work anyway, things like that. So please, in fact, one of my colleagues, William Lamb, is actually going to talk about how to use the Raspberry Pi as a vSAN witness node. And vSAN is our virtual distributed storage solution. And if you can plug my Twitter account, that'd be fantastic. That's me. The what ain't inside, I think it's something that John Master said, guess what's not inside? Yeah, Intel, right? No, it's not Intel inside. So anyway, it's kind of lame, but it's stuck with me since 2013. And I don't really just talk about VMware stuff. It's more like ARM stuff. And yeah, I'm interested in virtualization, containers, but follow me. It's all ARM stuff, not just VMware. I promise.
Robert, you muted.
Started that off so good too. Yeah, I'll be the first one here real quick, and then I'll pass it out to Alessandro to close this out. But gosh, seriously, the first Innovation Coffee Special Brew, first day of the first ever ARM Dev Summit. Super stoked. Mark, Andrei, thank you so much for joining us today. I mean, I couldn't have asked for better guests. And I'm going to say the same thing tomorrow and the next day, but couldn't have asked for better guests. It's been a pleasure. Yeah. Yeah. And thank you, everyone who's watching, everyone on the call. Please stay tuned, subscribe, like below, and stay tuned for more awesome videos. Over to you, Alessandro.
Yeah, it was awesome. Guys, thank you so much. I was a bit out of my depth, you guys are doing all this amazing stuff. But there's a lot to learn, and there's a lot more to learn tomorrow at your sessions. So I'm excited about the next day. So this is just the first of 3 days. So Dev Summit is on, and I'm excited about what's happening tomorrow and Thursday. So thank you guys again, Mark and Andrei, for participating, and thank you everyone for watching this.
We'll see you all later.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.